everyone. I realize we're a little bit about a month and a half away from getting the newest Marvel movie and the latest addition into the MCU, but I also just remembered that I forgot to review the last one that came out. So, let's make up for that indiscretion today with Spider-Man Far From Home. Spider-Man Far From Home takes place directly after the events of Avengers Endgame, and we see how not only how Spider-Man is dealing with some of the fallout that happened in Endgame, we also see how the rest of the world is coping with the events of Endgame and some of the stuff that was set up in Infinity War. There are new bad guys coming out, and S.H.I.E.L.D. knows that we have to get a new hero, so they come knocking on Spider-Man's door, and he's introduced to S.H.I.E.L.D., and S.H.I.E.L.D. says, "We want you to work for us." All Spider-Man wants is to go on vacation in Europe with his classmates. I didn't like this movie at all. I think this is not only a bad sequel to Spider-Man Spider-Man Homecoming, I think it leans heavily on making too much of turning Peter Parker into Tony Stark. I also didn't like the comedy in this movie. This movie was bad in the comedy department. Holy cow. Whether it's Flash Thompson, who never gets a laugh in this movie. Ned is completely... He has this little thing, basically. They hook him up with a girl during this European trip, more or less just to get him the hell out of the story. And his jokes are just like nerdy, boring jokes that just kind of made me cringe more than they made me want to laugh. I also think because of taking the setting and trying to introduce Peter as the next Tony Stark, lost a lot of the heart of Homecoming. This movie very much suffers from that, and I don't know why they had to go and take him and move him into this huge, sprawling storyline, which is one of the things that actually made a Homecoming a lot better than it should have been, in all honesty. I know a lot of people said the stakes weren't high enough. Well, in this movie we got that answered, and it wasn't really interesting at all. One of the biggest problems for the movie for me is the fact that if you're a comic book fan, the introduction of a new character, it was literally like, okay, I know what he's gonna do. I've read a comic before. So the whole time that character was trying to be different, I was just literally sitting there going, okay, we know what's going to happen. We've all read comic books. There is no shock. And when that character does what he does and go exactly how he is in the comics, there's no shock. There's no suspense. There's no disbelief in it. I was just literally sitting there for about an hour and 20 minutes going, okay, now he finally showed his true colors. And then that hurt the movie because there's no suspense in it, in all honesty. I never bought that character for a minute being something he wasn't. So that kind of really did hurt the movie for me. Comedy was very bad. Why has Nick Fury been belittled in these movies all of a sudden? Ever since Captain Marvel, Nick Fury has been seriously neutered. And not only that, he's been made a laughingstock. There is an explanation going on for why that is for the most part. But at the very last end credits scene, it ends much like many of the other jokes in this movie, flat and just making me cringe. And just slapping my head going, who thinks this is funny? Alright, I know I've been a little bit on the bad side, and we'll get back to that in a moment. Let's talk about the good stuff in this movie. Once again, Tom Holland proves he's just a super likable, and he plays his role well as not only Spider-Man but as Peter Parker, dealing with being a student and trying to balance out being a hero and now trying to live up to the expectations of Tony Stark, his mentor. There is an interesting thing if you look at it. There's never a scene where you kind of don't have Iron Man, Tony Stark, premanating from the screen. There are scenes where he'll just be standing there and there'll be a mural in the background. There'll be some type of reminder that he's kind of looming. He's a huge shadow looming over the whole universe and the world. Take the whole snap and what their conclusion for it was, as it's now known as the blip. Yeah, for me, it's take it or leave it. I didn't really care. It didn't upset me, but it was just kind of like, oh, you're trying to be Iron Man, and the last 35 minutes of Infinity War, and it never really gelled with me. Jake Gyllenhaal as Mysterio, excellent casting. He is wonderful, and I will have to say, there is a certain, I don't want to call it dream sequence, but there are a couple sequences where Mysterio uses his abilities that are amazing. Like the first time he uses it, wow, that is easily the best scene in the movie. It just blows everything away. And Jake Gyllenhaal was really good in this movie. I have to give him that. There is a credits, the first mid-credits scene is the return of a character from the Sam Raimi universe, and he is really welcomed here. And I'll get to the rest of that mid-credits scene in a moment. I did really like the fact that they had MJ or whatever, Zendaya as MJ and Tom Holland. I think the parts where they had to be look at each other and kind of like each other and have like this huge crush on each other, I thought that was very cute, and they both played well off of each other, and you really buy that relationship. So those are the parts I liked. I like Gyllenhaal, Holland. I like a couple of the fight sequences. They were really good. Let's go back to the bad stuff now. There is an introduction of a character to put a wedge between MJ and Peter, who not only didn't make any sense, was really useless once you get to the end of the movie. It's really served barely any purpose to it, and you never got a feeling why that character hated Peter, other than the fact that he wanted MJ. But MJ is just such an unlikable prick to anyone else when she's away from Peter. I didn't understand what the fascination was. Also, unless something big is gonna happen in the next Spider-Man movie, all the stuff with Flash was really either dumb, not funny, or feels like they're trying to set up something that it feels like unnecessary. Like, either have him as a friend, a bully, but don't try to go midway with him. Have him trying to set up stuff for another movie, trying for him to be goofy, also trying to have him be not a bully to Peter, but just like someone who just like makes fun of him, like who likes to like goof on him. Like, choose one. He was really like annoying in this movie, in all honesty. Ned, like I said, he's a non-factor. They have him have a romance just so you can get him away from the main storyline, just to hit the reset button at the end. Also, let's talk about the first mid-credit scene, the first credit scene. I liked it up until it got to the end. Then it just made me wonder, why does anyone have superhero names in this universe? It doesn't make any sense now that you've done this to Spider-Man. This movie's came out about 9 months ago, so I know I'm trying to be vague and speak non-spoiler of it, but if you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. I don't get the purpose in that. And it just proves another reason that you're trying to make him into Tony. Why can't Peter be Peter? That sounds slightly dirty. Yeah, I know a lot of people love this movie. It made over $1 billion. I just couldn't. Whether it's the fact that you were waiting for the one character to like just took all the tension away. Nick Fury being a laughing stock. You can tell this movie was trying hard to be funny. The two chaperones, the two teachers from Homecoming are in this movie. Never funny. They are probably, they're so bad in this movie. You could have had Charlie Day and whoever the other guy was from Pacific Rim in this movie, and they would have been a lot funnier than these chaperones. They're just lame and boring and unfunny. I didn't like Spider-Man Far From Home. Matter of fact, I call it Spider-Man Far From Good. It had moments in it where it could have been good. It's just dragged down by trying to do too much, trying to be something it's not to be, trying to change the Peter Parker character, and having zero suspense. Maybe there's a little in the last fight scene, but other than that, like, this movie just had too much stuff against it for me. So, yeah, I know we got Black Widow coming up in a month and a half or 2 months. And I'll be doing a review of that, maybe. But after Spider-Man Far From Home, I'm done. I really have no interest in this universe. And I know I'm alone on this stuff. So, but that's my opinion, and that's how I feel. So that's my thoughts on Spider-Man Far From Home. I'm going to give it a 5.2. Alright. If it wasn't for Jake Gyllenhaal, my score would be way lower. So that's my thoughts. I'm sure you'll agree with me. Put it down in the comments below. Or maybe there is someone who agreed with me. That whole hour before the person revealed who he really is, like, there was no tension in it. You were just sitting there going, he's going to do it now? No. He's going to do it now? No. Now? Okay, now he's the bad guy. Okay, let's move. So, yeah. That's my thoughts on Spider-Man Far From Home. I'm catching up on some stuff I unfortunately didn't get to do last year. And I will be doing some new ones this weekend. So, talk to you later. Bye.